Well, welcome to Father and Son, and welcome to you, Tom.
Morning,
Tuesday morning. Did you watch Q&A last night?
I did indeed. It was one of the more surprising ones we've seen in a while. Now, every now and then they have these specials where they have one person. Julia Gillard did it, Tony Abbott did it, and last night it was, of course, the former Prime Minister, John Howard. But it was surprising, not for the question and answer session, but for the fact that I think almost for the first time we had a physical assault on one of the guests when someone...
This morning on the radio he said he wasn't trying to hit him. It's not an assault. He was just disgusted with Australia going to war in Iraq.
Well, he was, although I read that he said he's simply not a very good thrower of balls or shoes, and as a result he couldn't have probably hit him all that hard, even if he wanted to. For those who didn't see it, it's all over the news. A man who was obviously agitated about the government's role in the Iraq war decided to stand up and throw both of his shoes at the former Prime Minister. He missed, and John Howard took it very well. Interestingly, the guy on the way out asked the ABC could he have his shoes back.
He didn't.
He did.
Did they give them to him?
I don't know. I haven't answered that.
Well, the interesting thing is, Howard is launching his new book today, The Rise of the...
Lazarus Rising.
Yeah, Lazarus Rising. I thought he was brilliant last night. He got very difficult questions asked of him, and I thought he was just an absolute pro. When you look at him compared to Abbott or Gillard or any of these other leaders, he is a street ahead of them.
Well, that's true, although it's a lot easier for politicians to be frank in front of questions after they're no longer in office, because they don't have to worry about what the opinion polls might say the next day. But no, I thought he was impressive. Look, he dodged a few questions on things like...
He dodged them brilliantly.
Yeah. And of course, one of the more surprising questions was when when David Hicks, the former inmate from Guantanamo Bay, suddenly was sprung on John Howard. Now, he obviously wasn't expecting
was coming.
No. And look, he didn't really answer Hicks's question, but he did make the very valuable point that, had Hicks at one stage supported the Taliban and or Al-Qaeda, well, if that sort of government was in power, I can tell you, former opponents of the regime would not be allowed to stand up on national television and ask questions. And there was Hicks being able to ask a question of the man who had some hand in leaving him in jail, whether you think that was right or wrong. So
we did urge, Howard said we tried to urge the US government to deal with it more quickly. And in the end, he pleaded guilty to training as a terrorist.
Yeah, but to be fair, his Marine Corps lawyer, Major Maury, his name was, did urge him to plead because, to be honest, I think he felt that there was some physical pressure. That's all old stuff. But the point is, it was a very good show. It shows why the Q&A format is very good. And it did also show, I think, why John Howard stayed in power for 11 and a half years.
Exactly. All right, let's go on to the other big news. The Australian Stock Exchange has been made an offer by the Singapore Stock Exchange. A lot of my friends are stockbrokers who have all got a lot of shares in the Australian Stock Exchange, so they're all wanting it to go through. If it does go through, what's it going to mean for Australian business in Asia? Anything?
I think it's pretty positive. Now, if you're just somebody who likes to buy and sell shares on the stock market, this will give you a bigger market in which to invest, if you like. Singapore has a regulatory regime which is very similar to Australia's, and by that very strong. So if there's any other market that we could merge with, Singapore is definitely the best one. And if you're the sort of investor who might be interested in investing in firms with a substantial customer base in China or anywhere else in Southeast Asia, being linked with Singapore will be a good thing. Secondly, if you're a company, and a lot of companies will be able to be dual listed on both exchanges, that'll become much easier. You've got a much wider investor base from which to raise money. So it's, I would say, unambiguously good for business. The negativity, and today the stock exchange shares are down a couple of dollars because overnight Bob Catt has come out and said he's against it, Bob Brown said he's against it, Joe Hockey sort of undenied over it, and there's a lot of regulatory approvals because...
Why? Here is a public company. Now, public companies to be listed on the stock exchange surely have to be subject to takeovers and things of that nature. So there must be some contradictory law.
Well, contradictory, there's some accidents of history. The stock exchange was founded by an act of Parliament, so apparently Parliament, not just the Foreign Investment Review Board, but the whole Parliament has to approve the sale. Secondly, there is a 15% shareholder cap on it. Now, that used to be 5%. Interestingly, Joe Hockey, when he was finance minister, was one of the, or I think it was minister for something like finance under the Howard government, he approved the lift in the shareholder cap from 5 to 15%. But to effect a full takeover, of course, you have to get to 100%. You've got
to 90.
well, 90 and then 100. You've got the Singapore Monetary Authority has to approve it. All this is going to take 6 to 8 months. So this deal is far from being done. And if there's a lot of opposition in the federal parliament and the Treasurer decides that the public is against it, then I put it at only a 50-50 chance of going ahead.
This could be a real chance. The names you mentioned were people who were all those independents. But Labor, well, what did Joe Hockey actually say?
Well, he just unannounced that we need a review in the financial system and that sort of thing. He didn't come down and firmly say
I think there'll be a lot of pressure from business on the Liberal coalition. And if Labor then can see the Liberals will vote with them, well, then it'll go through.
Well, it'll go through. But it'll be interesting given that you've got Katter, who is a member on the Liberal side of the coalition side of the House, but Brown, who is on the Labor side of the House. Look, the reality is it makes sense for Australia to be more enmeshed with the rest of Asia, both from a business and a cultural perspective. Both stock exchanges dominate the region. You put them together, you've got a fantastic business model that will not adversely, it will positively impact both countries.
How big is the Singapore Stock Exchange compared to ours?
It's roughly similar. A lot of it depends whether you include all of Rio and BHP shares, which trade on several exchanges around the world. But the Singapore Exchange, in terms of its market value, is I think worth about 30% more than the Australian one. And you know, as a result, post the merger, if it goes ahead, Singaporeans will have around about 55% of the total shares, Australians around 45%. So it's close to a marriage of equals.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to lobby the Liberal members that I know to push this thing through. I think it makes eminent sense, as you said.
And look, we make, think of it this way, in Australia we make so much money selling things to Asian countries, not just China, but Japan, and places like Singapore, India. Korea. You know, it is understandable that they want to have a piece of the infrastructure, in this case financial infrastructure, that aids and abets all that process. It's good for Australia, good for the rest of Asia, and something which I agree with you, I hope goes through.
And, you know, you've got to remember that the ASX doesn't really, they've had a lot of powers taken away. ASIC have the power to control companies in this country.
Yes, and even post the merger, the ASX gave up a lot of its regulatory power, which admittedly was over itself in certain circumstances, to ASIC. ASIC will still be the regulator in Australia. Yep. The Singapore Monetary Authority will be the regulator in Singapore. And someone, for example, who looks closely at takeovers in general, I can tell you the takeover rules in Singapore are very similar to those in Australia, and most of their other rules are too. So it won't be a difficult thing, and it won't lower the level of regulation, which kept both countries well free of the global financial crisis 2 years ago.
Well, just to finish, Tom, I went out to the Cox Plate last Saturday and I saw 2 out-and-out champions. So you think, I probably think it could become the greatest horse I've seen in my lifetime. The other 2 that I recall, one was Tulloch when I was at university, and he was an out-and-out champion. And then the triple Cox Plate winner, whose name escapes me at this moment, he was a champion as well. The other one was Black Caviar, who's now had 7 starts for 7 wins. It's a wonderful young sprinter.
Not a bad record.
No. Now of course we go to the big carnival, the VRC 150th Melbourne Cup Carnival, and all the press is all about, will Say You Think run out the 2 miles. Tommy Smith, who was a very famous trainer and has more, he's got more Group 1s than even Bart Cummings, father of Gay Waterhouse, said champions can run any distance because they know how to win. Well, I've got a big double running on Say You Think with Desperado, and I just hope he gets up on Tuesday.
Well, we'll see. He's never run the distance before, so we'll find out.
He hasn't had a chance to. He's only had 10 starts. He's won 2 Cox Plates. He's fantastic.
I assume he's done it in training. Anyway, we'll see. Melbourne Derby Day this Saturday, Melbourne Cup on Tuesday.
And just a worry for Derby Day, for those of you thinking of going.
The weather's going to be horrible.
Yeah, it's going to rain, which will be a disaster. All right, we'll see you all next week. Thank you.